Well, everybody, thank you so very much for being here on this beautiful Friday before Halloween. This will hopefully not be a spooky, but rather an enlightening conversation for you.
Not
Today
for
we
me,
are
because my birthday was yesterday.
well. Happy birthday to you. I'll make sure to
Thank
save
you.
my extra candy for you. We're very, very fortunate to have Mr. Tylor Hart with us today. Tylor Hart is a manager at Pittsburgh Public Schools, whose work in out-of-school time involves managing its partner network of more than 150 out-of-school time providers and supporting the district's flagship summer program, Summer Boost. After spending more than a decade supporting Pittsburgh youth in the out-of-school time space, Tylor understands the importance of exciting and relevant extended learning opportunities for all youth. He strives to connect students to programs and individuals that are invested in the lives and success of youth while meeting their individual needs and interests. While originally from Erie, Pennsylvania, Tylor moved to Pittsburgh with the goal of teaching secondary mathematics. During his study at the University of Pittsburgh, he saw how meaningful learning could occur outside the traditional classroom, and realized the transformative nature of informal learning spaces. Through this, he developed a passion for out-of-school time learning and continues to bring that passion into all aspects of his work, supporting district programs and partners. Everybody, please welcome Mr. Tylor Hart.
I was just clap. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think it's Daniel, and thank you so much for the introduction. Bit of a different environment for me today. Typically, I talk just about out of school time, and we'll do that. But just wanted to share a little bit, about myself with you. So, my name's Tylor Hart. I always like to tell people it's Tyler. It's O-R, like sailor. I'm the manager here for out of school time community partnerships at Pittsburgh Public Schools, and that means a couple different things here. And I think understanding what we mean when we say out of school time is important, and what does out of school time mean as it relates to a school district being another. But I also just want to share a bit with you all, just a bit about myself, have you get to know me too, and maybe kind of understand for me, from my perspective, like how did I get to where I am today, to where I'm doing some things now, and why that means that to me in the first place. So who am I? Obviously, this is not a picture of me, but as was mentioned earlier, I'm not from Pittsburgh. I'm from Erie, which is city northwest in Pennsylvania, so about 2 hours north of here. So that's where I grew up. That's where I went to school, and I come from a very large family. And I'd say, I love my family, but I'll say it's part of the reason I think out of school time learning is so important and was important to me growing up as well. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. And when you share a bedroom with 3 of your brothers, I feel like you can start to appreciate that time you get to spend outside of the home, engaging in some of those unique activities. For me, that was music or sports. I went to Erie Public Schools for my entire education through a number of schools. And when I went to high school, I went to NPCA, which for us, that was it was our college prep magnet. So similar to kind of what we would have at like Mallions here in Pittsburgh. And for me, when I was in school, my 2 favorite subjects and things that I like to do throughout my entire, early education were math and music. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I think it was mentioned that, I first wanted to teach math. That was kind of why I went to school and why I moved to Pittsburgh to attend Pitt. I wanted to pursue my master's in teaching here, wanted to study math. It was a great university close to home. But something that was, for me, that was a bit difficult was that I was a first generation college student. I didn't really have my family didn't have the knowledge to support me in doing this. It was kind of a new venture for me. And I found that kind of on my educational journey, I switched my major multiple times. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The last thing, just to give you context, I do live in the city. I've lived around a bunch of different locations, but presently I live in Brookline with my wife and my dog, Storm. And so that's who we're looking at here. That's Storm. And I just want to mention a couple of things that I like to do because I really love my work. But outside of that, I have a lot of hobbies too. And maybe we might be able to relate on one of these. So I had a couple pictures of these things that I like to do. So I like to go kayaking when I get a chance to do that. I like taking my dog for a walk. That's Storm, you saw a picture of earlier. Music, I mentioned, was really, really exciting to me when I was in school. And so that's something I still like to do outside of that. So playing instruments. I've got a record collection. I really like listening to those. Reading's huge, even though English language arts wasn't a major topic for me growing up as far as something I was interested in. I developed a real love for that. Love playing games, really, of any kind. And gardening and food, I kind of see those going hand in hand. So the food one's interesting because what I'll say is when I was younger, the first thing I wanted to be was a baker. I always said, you know what, growing up, I don't care that much about school right now. I just want to be a baker. I want to make food that people eat. And by the 6th grade, I had shifted paths a little bit. And I decided, I was like, I want to be a math teacher. And so from my perspective then, and for a long time, was that, well, I did well in math class. And what I learned to realize wasn't necessarily that I was inherently better at math than anyone. It was just that the way math was taught worked well for me. And so what I got excited about was I had some really great math teachers, and I wanted to be like that. I said, okay, so if I'm going to go to school, I want to help everybody else get excited about math. And we'll come back around to that later. And so I found myself going to the University of Pittsburgh for a number of reasons. And like a lot of college students, I needed a job to pay the bills. And for me, the way I saw it was, well, if I can get a job that helps me pay those bills, but helps me work towards what I want to do, which at the time was, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to educate students. I started working for a program that was located in their student volunteer outreach office called Jumpstart. And so Jumpstart is an early education program where you get early childhood education training, and you get placed into community early learning centers. And so for me, I'm like, great, cool. I can get paid through a work-study program. I'm getting this early childhood education and getting an idea of what it's like to be an educator. And I actually worked in 2 different centers. I worked in one center out of Homewood, and I worked at another in the Hilltop communities. So I got a chance to see more of Pittsburgh. As I mentioned, I wasn't from here, but I got to learn more about what does Pittsburgh look like, right? How are things different in other neighborhoods? And how can I take skills that I learned in one preschool and translate it to another? But what I'll say is like that, and in addition to, I had a fantastic academic advisor at the university who's really supportive of me and looking about what I wanted to do for next steps. It really helped me develop my interest in out of school time. Now, when we think of early learning, we don't always think of out of school time, but for me, I do. And I think this goes back to what I mentioned around mathematics, right? I later learned that it wasn't that I was good at math. It was that how it was being taught to me worked well for me. And when I got the chance to work with little ones, this is like 2 years old to 5 years old, you realize that like, oh, wait, teaching math isn't just about learning it one way. Of course, we always teach in school, maybe one particular way. However, what you may be learning in school about math might be taught in a different way than I was taught, right? And so I started to see in these preschool and these early learning classrooms that really it's about like finding what works for kids, what gets them excited. How can we make meaningful connections? And that kind of started taking me to a path that said, maybe this traditional pathway for math teaching, right? Teaching in a public school, teaching algebra, whatever it might be, might not be the way for me. And I started to explore some other options. And again, I had a fantastic advisor, Aronde Sharif, got to call him out. Again, I really appreciate his support to this day. But in talking to him, he kind of mentioned all these other opportunities I had to kind of pursue that passion, to connect, with the communities that we're serving. So I mentioned Jumpstart. I worked with a few other nonprofits doing some direct service programming. So you'll see here, I've got a few different ones listed here. So Jumpstart, I was working with those pre-K kiddos. Great time. Oops, sorry, go back. Earth and Vessels Outreach. I was actually doing some construction work with them and brought in some volunteers to do some coordination on a facility that they were using for their out-of-school time programming. I worked for an organization called the Hill House Association, and this I want to talk about a little bit. The Hill House no longer, is operational, but at the time, I was a science educator in out of school. This was like the embodiment of what I talked about earlier when I think about like math, and not everybody might like learns in the same way. And so I really got to embrace that as a science teacher after school at University Prep here. And we got to partner with some great folks that I still get to work with today because they're out of school time providers here. But in doing this, rather than following, our state curriculum, we wanted it to be aligned. But we were thinking about science. We got to talk with the science teacher. What are the kids learning? And then I got to talk with the kids that were in the activity itself and say, what are you interested in doing, right? And being able to relate the two, what we need to be learning, right? So we can kind of work towards the test, but also what am I interested in? What's going to get me excited about coming after school and learning, right? And I think that work and getting to work with middle schoolers there was just a really foundational moment for me. I also went on to work with the History Center and the Thelma Levette YMCA, where I also got to work with Pittsburgh Public School students. But I've got to have a but in here. for a lot of these, I think I was very happy getting the chance to work with students, to see them get excited about learning. But I was frustrated as well. And I was frustrated that sometimes there seemed like there were just small barriers to us being able to do even more things that would be fun, exciting, and beneficial to the programming itself. Whether that be, we weren't able to use the smartboard at the school without having a login or a access to the Wi-Fi so that we could watch a documentary on weather, right, when we were talking about earth science. And so, I was fortunate to also have a teacher in the building work closely with me. But I started to think more of, how can I get involved in understanding from the district perspective the experience of these out-of-school time programs? Again, I see the value in the work that's happening out of school time, but I want to see how could we do more for this, right? From that perspective and having that knowledge, what can I do to maybe help prop these programs up and change the systems that we had in place to support out-of-school time programming a bit more? And that led me to Pittsburgh Public Schools. So I got this nice old picture of our building in Oakland here. It still looks the same. A few different changes around it. But I began, while I was still working with one of our out-of-school time providers, I began as an intern in our office here at Pittsburgh Public Schools for the Summer Dreamers Academy, which is our summer program. And so that was really up my wheelhouse, is sort of direct service. And what I mean by that is these are these programs that are directly working with students, right? You all are working with Oakland Planning Development through the School to Career program, but we're thinking of those as like direct service programs. So I was like, great, I can come at the district, see how they run their programs. And through this work, I also was able to, take some of that knowledge background that I had working with some of these community-based organizations I mentioned earlier. And that translated into my next role with the district, which was the program assistant for out-of-school time partnerships, data and evaluation, right? And so from here, you'll see there's a couple of changes. This is all at Pittsburgh Public Schools, taking me to the role I'm currently in. And I just want to reiterate one of the reasons why I was so interested in coming this route, because there is a difference in the sort of direct service and more of an intermediary administrative role, right? And we'll talk a little bit about, I think, what that entails and some of the things that, if you were interested in administration, what you might want to be thinking about. But for me, it was, and I loved working with the students. I love, and I still get to do that in my current role, which is nice for our summer programming. But I got to be on sort of the behind the curtain of understanding what are the mechanisms that are in place. I like to say sometimes we try to be covert operators, right? We're working with, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I work for a school district, but I understand that some of the systems that we have in place aren't working, right? They're not working for all students. And I see our out of school time providers providing some great services that are meeting that need at times where we're not. And so if I can be behind the curtain inside the system, finding ways to make that work, right? So we can ensure that kids have access to those additional learning opportunities that teach you math from a perspective that makes sense to you, right? It's not just math programming, but I'm trying to use that same analogy here, right? Like, again, not everybody's going to learn the same way I do. I think out of school time is so exciting because it allows you to do that, explore something new, develop a new passion. And so rather than go through each one of these job descriptions, which I wouldn't find terribly exciting, I just wanted to talk about what do we do at out of school time at PPS, right? And so I've said out of school time, talked about direct service programming. Well, out of school time, when we define that here, we're thinking of anything that happens out of what you all in the community, in society, think of as school traditionally, right? So this is after school programs, it's before school programs, it's summer programs, it's a mentorship program that comes in during lunch. It's the Carnegie Science Center coming in to support what you're already learning in your science class, right? So I think it's a pretty big bucket. And for us in our office here at PPS, our areas of work right now are direct service programming. We talked about that, and how we deliver that is through our Summer Boost program. It's a summer program. We serve over 1,000, around 1,500 students in that program itself. And you might be saying, okay, well, but you all are administrators, like I said earlier, right? So some of the things that we do is we staff the program. So we need to make sure that we have high quality instructors. We need to find high quality enrichment, because our summer program isn't just summer school. We bring in some of my hobbies, right? Kayaking. We have Venture Outdoors, fantastic partner of us bringing in kayaking for students, but we have to have folks on the background who are coordinating that. How are we reaching out to organizations to encourage them to work with us, to bring those opportunities to the participants, right? We have to do the logistical planning behind it. So we order materials. How many kids are coming? What do we need to make sure is available to them, right? What sort of facilities or things do we need? When we have a ceramics provider, they need a kiln, which is a device they use to actually basically bake the clay. We have to make sure that stuff is available. So we're doing that on the back end. There's a lot of things that go into that, but the best part, and why I'm so excited that I still get to be involved, is that we're directly serving kiddos. So when the summer comes, yep, we spend the whole year planning and trying to make sure it happens. But when it's happening, we can be there to make sure it's happening how we wanted it to happen, right? We can see that the kids are learning during the day. We can see that they're doing fun, exciting things. We can bring in a book fair where people get exciting grade level appropriate books at no cost to them and are participating in a fun, exciting activity. It's also mentioned that we manage a number of formal partnerships, one of which School to Career is one of our close partners. We're really happy to have them with us. Right now, we've got more than 126 board-approved providers. I say that because we have a quarterly process, so right now we're going to be bringing some more folks in there. And this is across all of our Pittsburgh public school buildings. That's more than 60 buildings these folks are working with us with, and they serve over a third of all students in the district. I say over a third because we know it's a little bit underreported, but we at least have around 35% of our students being supported through one of these programs. You all would be considered a part of that group of folks supported. And so this is what I would call more of our intermediary work, where we're working in between the direct service, the service you're receiving, right, and you. So kind of put this into a bucket of supporting external programs. So we want to establish new relationships and programs. I kind of mentioned that a little bit when it comes to enrichment for our summer program. But we want to be able to say, well, what are students interested in? What do families want to have access to? How can we find organizations that do this work and try to connect them to schools? We share data. We want to understand what's happening. Who's in which program, right? How can we provide information that's going to help them help you while you're in the program? Professional development is something else that we want to focus on here. So we have a number of different resources as a district that we have access to. You all may have heard of something called Restorative Practices. It's something we want our staff practicing. We want our students practicing, but we want our partners to know what that means as well when we talk about doing things with each other, not for or to. And communicating. That's another big part of our work. We want School to Career to know if the school district is going to be closed tomorrow when there's snow on the ground, right? We're close enough to the snow season here. And so this is when you're thinking about out of school.
Oh, don't even say it. Don't even say it.
I had to. I'm sorry. I got a little bit early there.
Yeah, when you were talking about snow tomorrow, I didn't realize that was hypothetical. I was like, wait a second, really?
Yeah, not yet. But I mean, then again, we might need to check the weather. Yeah, but if for anybody who's thinking about out of school time, it's not just about giving weather alerts, but again, trying to understand, I think in this area, where are supports needed from the stakeholders as kind of this intermediary group existing between families and communities and the partners who are serving them. We really want to think about what should we be doing? How can we help? How can we support? And you know what? I said earlier that I would try to find a way to bring in escalators. So I'm going to go back just for a second. I know this is a bit roundabout, right? And so
you're a man of your word, Tyler.
I absolutely am. And so you might say, so a little bit about what we do in out of school time. How do you get involved in out of school time? So I mentioned that I was really fortunate to have a fantastic collegiate advisor after having changed my major a few times. Now, my office when I was at University of Pittsburgh, my department that I was a part of was on the 4th floor of a building. Now, for the entirety of my collegiate career, I think at least once a week, that escalator in that department was down. Almost every single week. So I frequently had to walk up that escalator to go see my academic advisor, who gave me a lot of really helpful advice, right? And I think what some advice that I would give to anybody, whether it's you're in high school, whether you're not in school right now, whether you're going to college, is to find those positive role models and those folks who are there to help you and have those important conversations. And a conversation that Rhonda and I had a lot was, what do I want to do and what do I want to accomplish from it? And being able to then identify what I could do that's going to get me there. And I think what I found through those conversations, for me, that traditional path of becoming a math teacher, I respect so much, but I realized that wasn't necessarily the way that I had to go about this, right? If my goal was to find ways to get other folks excited about learning, to learn something different, to realize that it's not that I'm not good at something, right? It might just be that I'm interested in something else, or I want to find a new way to learn about it. Out of school time was a great vehicle for that. And I had so many other opportunities before coming to PPS to kind of see that myself firsthand, and also recognize that what did I have to do to get there, right? And so for me, one of it was to engage in out of school time work. I think if you're interested in becoming an administrator or working for a large organization like a school district, I think it's important first that you understand the work that they do, right? Whether that's being a teacher or working in out of school time, having a strong understanding of that is going to allow you to better advocate for the folks who are involved. And so that's kind of why the first thing when I look at knowledge, skills, and abilities for folks in out of school time is like a knowledge of the out of school time ecosystem, right? What's going on, right? Where is it happening? What's happening? And so, having your pulse on that, I think, is really important if you're interested in out of school time work, right? So whether you're really interested in wanting to connect with organizations in your community, where are those community locations where folks are meeting? What are they engaged in? I think it's important. Computer proficiency is huge. As you can see, I'm on a computer right now with you all. You all are as well. But being able to communicate when you're not necessarily on the ground in a classroom, finding ways to, use the computer to create communications, whatever it might be. Public speaking and engagement's huge. But I would kind of want to loop in this idea of flexibility, is that, as you know, here it's after 4 o'clock on a Friday. Not everybody is together at 4 o'clock on the Friday. So understanding that being in out of school time, you need to be ready to be in out of school time, to put yourself in those spaces. Project management is another thing to think about as well. And that's something that you could study. And it's helpful in a lot of ways, but specifically for this type of work is sometimes you're making something out of nothing, and being able to organize information in a logical way that says, here is our goal. How do we get there? What are the steps we need to take? And who do we need to engage is really important. And that's why I have collaboration there as well. We really cannot do this alone. I mentioned we're an intermediary. Our partners at School to Career are doing the work, right? I'm not running that program. They're doing that work. I want to support them. And so being able to collaborate with folks who can do really high quality things and support folks, as they're trying to do that as well, is just so critical in this space. And there's a ton of things, but one thing that I would call out that I think is extremely important and why out of school time is so important to me is that I think it takes a commitment to equity. The systems that we have in place in our society are not supporting everyone. And there are certain individuals that benefit, and oftentimes it's individuals who look like myself, right, who are benefiting from systems that are in place. And out of school time programming allows a flexibility, allows us to think more critically about who we're serving, how we're serving, and how we're being responsive to the needs of people. Because ultimately, whether it's a school district or an out of school time program, it's not about the folks doing the work, it's about the folks that we're trying to reach and support within that work. So that's, as far as a presentation, I wanted to give you all an idea of like who I was and how I got here. And I know it's not necessarily like you go to school for this and then you do this or that, but more so wanted to give you a bit of background on kind of my thoughts on what led me sort of this angle, because you find in education a lot, if you want to be a teacher, there is a pathway that you can take to become a teacher. But if you're interested in out of school time learning or supporting in this particular way, I think there's a few more options that you can go. And so rather than ramble, because I'm sure that the folks on the call could tell you I'm good for talking, I do want to just stop, and maybe before we ask questions, I'd love to just get a hello or an introduction from the folks that were on a call today, so I get a chance to at least meet you all as well. So if you're open and willing, I'd love to just hear your name and where you go to school.
A couple of our students have been texting me and putting in the chat that they have bad internet connections, so might be a little bit of a delay. But Jeremiah, yeah, chime on in. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hold on, I'm at work. Hold on. Okay.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
My name's Jeremiah. I go to SciTech, and I'm in 9th grade.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Great to meet you, and thank you so much for joining at work, nonetheless.
Yeah, that's multitasking right there. Who else? Daniel, you want to share?
Daniel.
And again, if not, that's totally fine. We can go right to questions. I just always like to have an idea of who we're chatting with too. I wanted to share a bit about myself as well. But I'm curious, do you all have any questions for me or wonderings about anything that we talked about, or maybe something that you thought I was going to talk about that we didn't get to?
I can't believe you all are this quiet.
I know. Well, I have a question, Tyler. What is your favorite thing about working in out of school time?
Oh boy. Yeah. The answer, it's an easy answer when I think about it, but to put it into words is a little more difficult. But I just think the variety and the different opportunities that are available, I think is probably the most exciting part. It's a very large bucket. When we think about school, right, we think about a few different subjects. When we think about out of school time, there are so many different opportunities to engage and so many different things that you can do, whether that be, some of your core school subjects, right? You can get tutoring in some of those subject areas, but you could also learn to program a robot, right? You can learn to kayak down a river, right, and to camp when you're doing that. I mean, you can learn about what careers and opportunities are available to you in your neighborhood. I mean, we could, and I know I only named 3, but we could really, we can keep going. And I think that's what's so exciting is out of school time opportunities respond to the environment that they're in and the interests of the folks there. We have athletic out of school time programs, right? You might be on your school's football team, but maybe you also want to do soccer. So there's a community soccer organization that's talking about leadership and helping you become a better leader, but also playing soccer. I mean, it's so exciting to me, and that's got to be my number one. And being in administration and not doing all of that, I get to work with so many people who do fantastic things all over the place. And so I feel like I get to kind of live vicariously through all of them.
I have a question. So with COVID, and we all know personally that, everything kind of shut down for out of school time. Where do you see the future of out of school time?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And again, just bring up the fact that out of school time can be so flexible to need, that it positioned itself well, right? Programming was able to be virtual. Certain things cannot be replicated, as I'm sure many of you on the call know. You can't necessarily replicate all of those, that in-person time. However, it's opened up the door to, for instance, even these sessions, the fact that you all, if you wanted to reach more folks, would be able to do them, more easily with folks who aren't present, right? If you are meeting in a physical space, somebody's got to be nearby and available. But I think that tutoring and mentorship is something where we've seen a lot of changes as well. We have the opportunity for folks to volunteer their time to meet without having to drive across town, to be able to meet with young mentees, right? To talk about how things are going, to talk about how they can support and tutoring too, right? The school day, maybe you're not learning as well in that classroom setting, but you need that one-on-one support after school. We now have an opportunity, and we've got a few different organizations such as our Carnegie Mellon, who have moved a lot of their tutoring services virtual. So now if you need math help after school, you can meet almost on a dime with your tutor. So I think there's some really exciting things. The flexibility in out of school times enabled, I think, some of that to happen. But I think it's also pointed out, and I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there are certain things that we see as more critical that they happen in person, that physical proximity. And so I think as we're learning to kind of live with where we are right now with COVID being a thing, I think we're finding ways to be as safe as possible, but then also identifying when do we need to be in person so we can also be mentally safe as well.
Answer. Thank you.
Thank you. What kind of out of school time activities did you participate in when you were younger? Did you do any baking?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I spent a lot of time being in such a large household that we weren't necessarily, we were going a lot of places together around the school. So for me, what was huge was that I spent time doing sports and music. So being able to participate in band, right? Being able to, soccer was big. It was really easy to get one soccer ball for like 7 kids, but for me, baking, since I mentioned I wanted to be a baker, I spent a lot of time with my grandma. If my parents weren't there, and I'd go over to my grandma's house, and we would do a lot of baking, a lot of pizzelles. I don't know if you all know what pizzelles are. Maybe if I'm ever in person, I'll have to bring you all a bag. I'll make some up and bring some.
Ooh, I'll hold you to that.
Yeah. But so for me, like that's how I saw those engagements, and it wasn't necessarily something I was doing for a grade. Ceramics was another thing that I did. My great grandfather was a slip ceramicist, which is rather than like molding clay by hand, slip is like a very wet clay, and you would pour it into a mold. The mold would like suck out some of the moisture, and then you'd have this design that he would then fire. And I started to learn to do ceramics, did that for a number of years as well, pre-college. But so for me, that was a huge out of school time activity. Yeah. And then music performance when I was in college and things like that. So for me, like I saw a bit of the arts that I wasn't necessarily getting when I was in school was something that I was getting in out of school time. So I feel like it supplemented and really enriched my learning and helped me develop a passion for learning to begin with. Right? Because you use some of the same muscles, right? When you're learning a new task, like you're learning about ceramics, you're learning about an instrument, it can mirror how you learn when you're in the classroom.
You mentioned ceramics. That was my favorite hobby when we were overseas. So
I was just thinking that, Miss Carla, because you were talking about you did mostly slip molding, right?
That's all I did was slip molding. And I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to meet Sharif Bey. He has an exhibit at the museum, which is very close to you. And he's a ceramicist from Pittsburgh. So if you get a chance to get to the museum, I think his exhibit is there until maybe March or something like that, but definitely a talented artist. He went to, I know he lived on the West End, so whichever school. I don't know if it was Perry or Oliver. I don't remember which school.
Could have been Langley High School.
It could have been Langley. Yes, it probably was Langley. But yeah, definitely a talented artist. And since we share the love of ceramics, he might be somebody you want to check out. He's pretty famous now, but he's a Pittsburgh legend, which is pretty
Tyler,
now I'm nervous.
That sounds like a work-related activity.
It does. Just cross the street, go to the museum, and actually, I think November 6th and 7th, it's like rad days. You can go to the museum for free. So,
that's right.
Yeah, because I have it on my calendar. I'm like, I'm going.
That's great. Well, now I know, I'll have to make sure I'm careful with, if I unearth some of my old ceramics that Carla doesn't see them. I don't need, get an eagle eye for it. But, and even to that, we've got the Manchester Craftsman Guild. They have a fantastic pottery. Yeah. And so, just going even back to it, out of school time is so broad. And I think really it just appeals to, I think, everybody's interest in some way. I mentioned I like gardening. We've got some partners who do that too. Yeah. And so we have to talk to them about that. And whether you just like to garden because it's relaxing, or whether you like food like me and you're like, I get to make food and then just eat it. Great. Yeah. Right. Or if you're like, I want to be more environmentally conscious and be more sustainable for myself, there's going to be that angle that you might not get, right? It's really hard to talk about all of that when you're in a normal classroom setting. They're pushing you through, right? You've got your environmental science class, and now you have a chance to dig a bit deeper. So I just love out of school time. I really think it is great. And those were mine. I don't know if anybody else outside of school to career, does anybody want to share any other out of school time stuff they did, maybe even before school to career?
You read my mind. I was just about to say Jeremiah and Daniel. I think, unfortunately, Ayana and Drayana were the two that were having really, really big trouble with their internet today. So I hope
trying to send them the phone numbers too. So
I know.
Speaking of challenges,
seriously. But Jeremiah and Daniel, do you want to chime in and tell us either if you participate in any other out of school time activities, either PPS partners or otherwise, or what sorts of things would you like to see offered that maybe you haven't been able to find?
Me, I didn't participate in any out of school activities, and I want something. Well, I actually don't know what I like. I'll just have to wait to see what pops up, and I'll just try and ride the wave. Okay. Well, depending on what it is.
Is there anything in particular you'd like to see offered?
I don't know. All
right.
Or even just learn more about. I think that's something else. Even if you weren't to go somewhere, what is something you're like, that's interesting. Yeah. I wonder what's the deal with that, right?
I like to learn more about coding.
Coding?
Yeah.
Well, we got plenty of folks who can teach you how to code for sure.
Yeah. We just did IT help desk, and we do a lot of coding. STEM coding lab. There's a lot of programs.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, that's good to know. I'll see if we can set that up. That'd be great. Yeah. Thank you. And then Jeremiah, you got your hand raised, sir.
Yeah.
I have to leave and rejoin because I can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for making the effort to be here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think, maybe I'll add, because this is kind of just to build off what you had kind of asked me there, Jeremy, is, I didn't necessarily see some of those out of school time activities I was participating in when I was doing it as out of school time.
Right.
I think as I learned more about the work, I was like, wait a second. I've been doing out of school time programming for a long time. And in a lot of ways, for me, that's why I was excited about.
Right.
And not just because, like I said, I shared a bedroom with my three brothers and being outside of the house was exciting. It was a relief in a lot of ways. But, I think it's this understanding that learning can look so much different. And for me, a perfect world is where they're really blended together. I think something we want to do is, as a school district, how do we make it so, yes, we know you have to learn certain things during the school day, but how can we create those meaningful relationships outside of it, right? Coding was something that barely, oh boy, we were still, when I was in school, we would get AOL CDs in the mail for 25 hours of free dial-up internet.
Yeah.
So it would have been helpful to know coding, but it wasn't something that we were talking about at the time. And I think what's so cool about it now is like, there are plenty of careers surrounding coding, but you can also do it as a hobbyist if you just want to make your own website, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's just so cool about it. And out of school times adapted so quickly to meet that need.
Yeah.
So I would say thinking about that and just hearing what you had shared, Daniel, was like, that got me thinking like, yeah, we've got some great partners doing it. And even if you just want to like, they'll even sometimes just direct you to resources, right? Because your time's valuable. Your time's very important and it's limited. Right. So you're like, hey, I've got other priorities, but you can kind of check those things out when you need to and or are interested.
Right. And it looks like Jeremiah is back and has his hand raised. Nice to see you back, sir.
Okay. So did you say like what type of activities or like things that we wanted to use?
Yeah. We asked, what do you do outside of school to career and or what would you like to see offered that maybe you haven't been able to find?
I would say like, I mean, we already do typing classes, but I want more of that because I'm determined to like, for my future career. So I need that typing experience. And also like.
Ooh. I think someone wanted a number 7. Hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you hear and what did you did not hear?
You said and also, and then muted out after talking about typing.
So I mean, like, also, like, talking to more people about more careers that they do, and then, like, stuff that relates to what we want to do in the future.
Cool. Well, it looks like you chose the right program to go through orientation for, because we got you covered, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess what I maybe I neglected to mention, so forgive me for this, is even when you're thinking about if you are interested in sort of this community-based programming, and working in out of school time, is there are different routes that you can go, right? You might want to, if you're interested in being an educator, you have that opportunity, right? You can work directly with other folks who want to learn. I see some double thumbs up there, right? It's a very rewarding space to be in. Something that was exciting to me. That's how I went into out of school time. I wanted to be an educator. But you can also, you don't have to support in the classroom. Those other supports are needed. And so there are folks who do work like I do, and they work in between the students and the partners and say, hey, how can we bring resources there? But how can we also respond to what folks are saying as they need to be able to do things well? But then there are entirely different partners who, right, in out of school times and programs, you need to have food, right? So we have these other providers who are providing materials. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go as far as what you do with out of school time, but the content of what you do. I think if you find something you love and you're interested in, there's probably an avenue to teach other people about it throughout a school time as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jeremiah, what's up?
Is that from the last time?
Oh, I thought I saw a new hand.
Oh, yeah, that was me. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh, that was me. Is there like I think I can become EMT certified at 15. I just need like more training for that. So I don't know like what resources I could use to go down that path.
EMT certification. Okay.
Yeah.
What certification? I'm sorry.
EMT.
Oh. Yeah. So I think what's really, really cool is this is something else we'll see is there are folks like that who will reach out and saying, hey, we want to be able to connect with schools to help students that are interested in these type of careers develop that. I mean, I even think of just another one. I think as Jeremiah, I think you said you went to SciTech. Like we've got a drone certification program, a partner who does that for SciTech and Malayan. So like we have a lot of those programs that are doing that. If you are interested, what I'd be happy to support with is, you know, working with our friends at School to Career to see if we can make a connection after this. Even if it's not to a pre-existing program, and out of school time, we have so many different relationships with other folks that we might be able to connect you with somebody to talk with you more about those opportunities.
Yeah.
Like first responders will, you know, of all types of all sorts, right? They're always trying to look to reach out to folks who are interested so you can understand what would it be like, right? And what does becoming that role entail? What sort of what certification do you need, and how do you get started in that now? Because there are some I believe there's some pre-certification programs that may be available.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, Jeremiah, I'll make sure to follow up with Mr. Tyler for that information and send it your way.
All right.
Of course. Mr. Tyler, thank you so much for your time. Does anyone have any closing questions or statements for Mr. Tyler?
I have a closing statement.
Okay.
Mr. Tyler, thank you so much for your time here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you just allowing me, right, giving me your time on your Friday as well, just to listen to me talk about myself here. I just want to share this out with you all as well. Like, this is my email. If you know, I work for Pittsburgh Public Schools. If there's a way that we can support, you know, let us know. You know, if it's helping make a connection, right? If you're saying, hey, I'm interested in learning more about X, feel free to reach out to me so that I can, you know, I'd be happy to try to help make that connection, provide that little bit of extra context to an organization that helps you all kind of take a next step in learning something else new, right? Doing something else there.
Yeah. What he said.
Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It's always great talking to you. You know, I will blow up your email and your phone, but I've sort of, you know, pushed that off on Jeremy lately. But it has been great working with you over the years. I'm glad you're in this new role, but continuing on with all the good work and hard work that you've been doing for so many years. I really appreciate you and what you do.
Thank you. Literally, we could not do what we do in Out of School Time without all of the folks on this call, right? We're here for the students, but if you all weren't serving them, Out of School Time wouldn't exist. So thank you all for being present as well.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you. You are
Happy
a good
Friday,
man.
everyone.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Friday.
Enjoy it.
Alrighty.
All right. Bye.
Take care.